Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the League of Europe YouTube channel for round number 7 of Season 6 of Division 3. My name is Aidan Carter, otherwise known as Commentus. I'm back in the commentary box with you this evening, and joining me once again this week is obviously our trusty D3 co-coms. Killer Blue, Killer, how are you doing this evening, mate?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Grateful that you're back and I can sidestep from the lead com back into the co-com. Most stressful commentary of my life last week. But yes, very excited and perfectly timed because we're now getting underway. And well, I know you weren't here last week, but it was an absolutely cracking race. The first 10 laps were enthralling beyond belief. I had to keep pausing for breath even as the action was going on. Hopefully we get more of the same this week. And we've got all of our title rivals back. Tin Can wasn't here last week, but we've got him and Brendan and Carwin Rob all on track, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's great to see that all of our drivers are back into the lobby once again, so we can see what everybody's pace is like compared to their championship rivals. And like you say, was a really, really good race in the end. I did manage to catch just the last few bits of that race. Unfortunately, didn't catch the whole thing, but it did look like an exciting race at the end of it as well. At the end of the day, at the end of the French Grand Prix, it was, of course, our championship leader, Forza Brendan, who ended up taking full advantage of Tin Can's non-attendance and taking full points, 25 points for him. He won that race, so his championship lead now stands at 17 points. So he's got a pretty solid gap at the top of the championship over Tin Can, so Tin Can's got some catching up to do. Last time out, third place finisher was J. Cole. He's now third in the championship. He is a further 13 points behind Tin Can, 4 points behind J. Cole is Luke as well. Carwin Rob is next out of Brent. Till, Raleigh, Funky Chicken and Rekurik rounds off the top 10. Of course, Rekurik actually did get that podium spot in the end. J. Cole did lose that third place finish in the steward's room afterwards, so unfortunately not a podium for him. It was Rekurik's first podium of the season for him in the Haas, so that is a few extra points for him, and that would actually put him above, I believe, Funky Chicken in the standings by a singular point. So that's how it stands at the moment in the championship. It's all very close, but you've got to say, we're only 7 rounds in, we're not halfway through the championship yet, but at the moment, it's definitely kind of looking like a 2-horse race, isn't it?
It is, but week by week I hold out hope that Carwin Rob is going to pull himself into this. He had a very strong result at Singapore with taking that first victory. Last week he was second place. I know from the podium interviews afterwards he was very downbeat and quite chastened at that second place actually, which shows just the standards he holds himself and what he expects of himself in this division. So I certainly wouldn't narrow it down to a 2-horse race this early. It does look like it will be Brendan and Tin Can for the season, but I think Carwin Rob is going to come into it. He's certainly building his confidence, particularly in the races through the season. Beyond that, to be honest, I can't see it coming from anywhere. Funky Chicken has shown glimpses of promise. J. Cole has shown solid results, but I think beyond those three, I agree with you. I don't think there's anything more coming from that, but I definitely wouldn't count Carwin Rob out.
Yeah, definitely can't count him out. Like you say, he's been so fast all season long. I don't remember his qualifying position from last week, but up until that point at least, he was on the front row for every single race so far this season. So it's been a pretty incredible start to the season for him in terms of actual outright speed. Unfortunately, the races haven't really gone his way apart from the previous 2 rounds that we've had. So we'll see if he can keep up with that momentum. Looking forward to tonight, though. We are at the Sochi Autodrome in Russia for round 7 of the season, and it's fair to say that this track in real life at least is not a favourite. A lot of these drivers, it's not exactly a track with a lot of character as such, but at least on this game it can provide really, really good racing.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it is a bit of a Marmite track. Some drivers do seem to love this. I know J. Cole's a particular fan of it. For others, it's just one of those ones you just want to vote off as soon as you see it on the list at the start of the season. You just want to give it the boot. But personally, I'm a fan. I think it's got a really nice flow, particularly through those 90-degree corners in Sector 2. It's kind of a blend of, I think, Singapore and something a little more high speed. I think it has elements of a lot of tracks here. And it's just fun to drive. I think it's maybe not the best for racing. I think we are going to see a lot of trains come the race itself. DRS is so powerful here, as it is all game. But yeah, a lot of drivers don't like the track, personally I struggle to see why. I think it's an absolute fantastic one to drive.
Yeah, it definitely does have a good flow as well. One thing to look out for here tonight is going to be track limits in qualifying and in the race. There are penalties up for grabs for these drivers if they do extend a little bit too much at some of these corners, and unfortunately, since the patch, the performance patch, there seems to have been a little bit of problem with track limits on this track. It's very easy to run pretty much all the way out to the wall and not really get anything for it, so we've got to keep an eye out for that tonight. We're riding on board with Funky Chicken, as you can see. He's taken us through our first lap. He's just come to the end of the second sector with a 1:04.6, heading into the final part of the lap now. This part of the lap, somewhat reminiscent, you've got to say, a little bit of Yas Marina in its quick direction changes, in its 90-degree corners as well. Off camber through that one as well. So incredibly difficult to get that corner right turn 15 and 16. Final two corners of 17 and 18. Of course, the curbs as well have been reprofiled at this track in recent games, making it a little bit more difficult to get these cars through the corners. Through the final corner of turn 18, and it's a 1:30.9 from the Aston Martin man to go to the top of the timesheets so far. Across the line behind him goes Tiag in the Haas, and he is 1.1 seconds off the pace, not finding as much speed on his soft compound tyres. And we're expecting drivers to be around the 1:30s, maybe the mid-30s in qualifying. That is probably the outright pace we're going to see tonight. One thing to note though as well around this track is that the pace in quali between the softs and the mediums, as Colin Robb just proves my point, the pace between the softs and the mediums in qualifying is kind of nothing really, maybe only a couple of tenths.
Yeah, I think the game will tell you it's around 6 tenths. I think in reality, it's nowhere near that close. You can really pull out a competitive time on the mediums. I think last week at France that was 1.2 seconds. It's so much closer here that if you are in Calvin Robb's position, as just mentioned, if you're at the front, you can afford to go for a medium lap and still be competitive. It's not, it doesn't write you out of contention and going for the mediums here. So it's definitely something for the guys to consider. Brendan has only gone 1,000th quicker than Rob on the soft tyres, so that really exemplifies what we're saying there. 1,000th between them on different compounds. I know we'll come on to it, but Brendan can go a lot quicker than that. But just as an initial lap, that is a huge lap from Calvin Robb.
Yeah, it's a brilliant lap from him as well. Dowry, the other driver that's gone for the medium compound tyres, currently P7 in the McLaren. That's a pretty solid lap from himself as well. Dowry's not really had the season as someone...
Black Puma's just dropped out of turn 8. I think he either hit the bump on the inside. Those orange curbs can really unsettle the car. You either clip that or just run too wide at the back, stepped out on in there.
Yeah, it's such a shame, just as we were talking about his McLaren teammate as well. Just talking about McLaren kind of as a whole, really. Both Dowry and Black Puma got off to good starts, really, in terms of their competitiveness. But in recent rounds, it's really not gone McLaren's way, has it? It's been a real struggle, especially for Dowry. He's just not been able to really find a lot of luck so far this season. He's had good speed all the way through, just kind of converting it in the races for Dowry and for Black Puma as well. It's just been really difficult in recent rounds.
And France was typical of that. I think Dowry had 2 spins in the first 10 laps or so. He went completely around at turn 1, and I won't forget this season Black Puma's race at Spain, where he just cascaded down the field as his tyres gave way for him. This, as you say, they've certainly shown more promise on outright speed, but when it comes to the races, a little bit of inconsistency, a little bit of struggle to match that performance over a race distance. They've got the promise, as have I think a lot of drivers. I think AlphaTauri is another one in that regard, but it's not quite come good for them.
Yeah, not quite so far. The next person to cross the line to finish a lap is Raleigh JT in the Williams. Only a 32.3, so he stays at the bottom of the timetables. Unfortunately, only 15 drivers with us tonight, which is a shame to see. We are missing a few drivers, and a lot of the reserves weren't able to get their seats in time. They weren't notified quickly enough in time, so they weren't able to pop in themselves. Speaking of Williams, by the way, White Chai White is the new full-time driver for Williams, so he'll be in for the rest of the season. He's been an incredibly reliable reserve up to this point already, but he gets a full-time seat in place of IFR Noah, so look out for him now in this championship to try and get some points on the board and get a bit further up in the standings. Raleigh GT though, he's had strong rounds as of recent. He's shown really good speed, but a 32.3, didn't see if he made a mistake on that run, but that is maybe not representative of where we expect him to be.
He had a very shoddy middle part of the lap. He missed quite a few apexes. He had a couple of lockups as well. I don't know what he normally runs. TRT Trench just there improves to a 31.6. That was his second lap on those tyres. But yeah, he was locking up a lot. I wonder, I don't know if you can enlighten me here, but if he normally uses ABS or if he switched it off? Because it looked like, what on board with him, he was someone who wasn't used to driving without ABS with the way he was locking up and understeering through some of those middle sector corners.
It'd be good to know. I don't believe he's run ABS as of recently. I'm not quite sure myself. I think he has run with no assists in the past, but it'd be good to know. It'd be good to find out from him if that is the case. But yeah, unfortunately for him, not the start to qualifying that he would have wanted. Trench has done a second lap on his set of soft compound tyres and only remains 11th at the moment in the Alpine. Hasn't been attending of recent rounds. He's not had the best attendance so far this season, and he's really been outshone, unfortunately, so far by his Alpine teammate. He wants to hopefully get a bit further up the field. Everyone coming out onto the track now for their second runs in this session, and interestingly, on their second runs, J. Cole and Tin Can have now gone out on a set of mediums as well. They're going to try something a little bit different.
I know J. Cole was a little bit disappointed with his quali pace in retrospect come the end of the week. He was very bullish coming into this round. He certainly was in the podium interviews last week, but I don't think either of them are particularly happy with their quali pace. Some Excel insider knowledge there. So I think maybe they're thinking go mediums, qualify mediums, run long, because we've not mentioned it yet, but there is rain coming at the end of the race, I've been told. So they may be thinking big picture and think qualify mediums, take the hit in grid position, and have the confidence that they can run all the way to that rain if it does hit, and if not, they can just run medium soft.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. It gives them a little bit more of an open opportunity to try something a bit different. So yeah, that is a good shout from those drivers if that is the case then. YHYY is the next person to start a run around the Sochi Autodrome. So let's ride on board with the Williams man as he heads down that long run towards turn 2. Look out for this at the start of the race, of course, one of the longest runs to a first braking zone on the Formula 1 calendar, and we've seen in the past and many different divisions there's been quite a few collisions running up towards that corner. We saw it in Division 3 last season where a big pile-up happened, taking about 3 cars out of the race before they even got to turn 2, so very possible that that could happen this evening. Right, alright then, through the first sector split, he's about 0.3 of a second up already, so that is a good first sector time from the Williams man, and at the moment it's pretty close throughout that midfield battle. Everyone pretty much within the 1 minute 31s, apart from Funky Chicken at the top of the timesheets and Tiogan Raleigh at the bottom of the timesheets. Whitehall then through the middle part of the lap, just clipping that sausage curb on the inside there. Very, very easy to do, and it can unsettle the car. A lot of these sausage curbs are quite brutal, so you don't really want to touch them if you can get away with it. Down this back straight, DRS in the race will be incredibly powerful. Down this straight then and into the third sector, the braking zone through 12 and into 13. He's not found any more time in the middle part of the lap, unfortunately. He stays at that 0.3 of a second advantage that he's had over his previous best time. Off camber 2 corners, then through turn 15 and then into 16, keeping it in the middle of the road so you don't have to tighten your run through turn 16. Doesn't quite get the best traction out the corner, and then dives into the pit lane at the end of the run. So Whitehall feeling that he could go a lot better than that and didn't want to improve on his time on that set of soft compound tyres. So Whitehall into the pit lane, or maybe that could be possibly for the opportunity to go for the mediums a little bit later on, as Darius crashed and Brent's gone fastest.
Yeah, a lot's happening there, and I think you're right in people are deciding to go for the mediums, and on that I think Brendan is as well. He had a very slow, tepid lap and completely backed off at the end of the second sector. Maybe he's going again, maybe not, but he wasn't improving sector 1, and we know he can go a lot quicker than his 31.0 anyway. He does a 35.3 after backing off, but I wonder if Brendan knows he can go quicker than some mediums, and he's going to go mediums, because Tin Can has popped in there on the mediums, a 31.0, very competitive him. I think some of these guys are going to switch to mediums, and they're going to go for the rain. They're going to go for that Hail Mary strategy and just switch to inters if it happens, because I thought the qualification would be quick in this, although Rob went mediums first lap. He's now gone on to provisional pole, but he's on the softs. He could end up having to do an extra stop depending when that rain comes. This is fascinating.
Yeah, it is really fascinating, because obviously we don't know as well, beyond when the rain is going to come, how intense that rain is going to be. Is it going to be intense enough to force intermediate tyres, or is it the rain not going to come down hard enough and we can finish this race on slick tyres? It is, plus beyond that, safety cars as well to include in that. So many different things can happen in this race. It's a difficult one to put your finger on as to what is the right strategy. Do you take the gamble and start on the mediums, or do you play it safe and start on the soft compound tyres? It's going to be an interesting one to see. Raleigh JT is on a run now as well. He slightly improves in the first sector, but not by a lot as they come through, as I believe that is Black Poma that's had yet another spin in this session in the McLaren. I think he has just before turn 15. He's got away with no damage, but he will not be improving on his time. And I do agree with you, it does look like a lot of drivers are purposely not improving on their times just to make sure that they have the opportunity to go on the mediums a little bit later on. Speaking of that, Tin Can, that is a good lap on the 31 flat on the medium compound tyres. However, he's done that on his second run in the session, which means we've still got quite a bit of time to go. Do you think that's a little bit too early in the session, considering that the best of the track conditions is going to come in about 3 or 4 minutes' time.
I think it is a bit early, but maybe his plan is just he's not expecting top 10, and he's maybe just hoping he can do a second lap on mediums and aim for 11th. But if other people are going mediums, I can't see that happening. He could easily stay there. So it's a bit of a strange one to go that early, unless he's planning to switch to softs. And his title rival, Forza Brendan, I think is confirmed to us that he plans on doing another lap on mediums, because he's improved to a 30.8, but that was his second lap on those tyres. But I'll switch that round and say, if he goes invalid now on his medium lap, he's in a lot of trouble that he's done an extra lap on these tyres.
Yeah, you would be in a lot of trouble. Like you say, he's already kind of on the back foot in this session. He needs to at least improve on another set of softs in this second run. If he doesn't do that and go on the mediums and then try and improve himself, it's going to be an interesting one for him to try and complete that one. Tim Mats has just started his next one, Nikos Mats, in the Alpha Tauri. 31.3 at the moment is his fastest time, just 4 thousandths behind his teammate from last season, RJTW, who's back in the Alfa Romeo this week in as a reserve for Peter Gillis, who unfortunately cannot attend this evening. And Tim Mats there a little bit wide through turn 4, and that's an invalidated lap time. So easy to do around this track, just the slightest run wide and he can invalidate. And that's going to be another thing in this race as well, isn't it? Track limits, a real problem around this track. It's going to be so easy for some of these drivers to pick up penalties, especially as well if the weather plays a part in it a little bit later on.
Yeah, I think I always end up overestimating penalties in D3. I think, we're going to see a bucket full, and then we end up seeing 2 or 3. So I don't want to go out on a limb and say we're going to see loads of them, but I don't think it necessarily will be quite as many as we expect. And case in point there with my predictions, I don't think anyone is switching to the mediums for this last run, so that's completely thrown cold water over my theory. As J. Cole's out on softs after botching his medium run, who else have we got coming out as well? We've got YHYY on softs, Trenches on softs. Everyone, I think, is committing to softs for this final run, so no sign of everyone going long for mediums inside the top 10.
Yeah, maybe people thinking that they can't quite keep their position inside the top 10 on that medium compound tyre. So going to be interesting then the end of this qualifying session to see what drivers can do. Can Tin Can stay inside the top 10 with that medium time, or is he going to have to improve on the softs to stay in, or does he want to stay inside the top 10? That is the crucial point as well. J. Cole is going to be the first person to start their final run. Actually, I lied about that. Tiag is on a lap currently in the Haas, currently down in 15th, the only man in the 32s at the moment. Hasn't found the best of the track so far, has not enjoyed it so far in the Haas. Coming through the middle part of the lap, the number 92 car is coming up to the end of the second sector, so we'll see how much of an improvement he's made in these first 2 parts. Clobbers that sausage curb on the inside there, but just about gets away with it without too much of a time loss. Then down the back straight, then this ever curving back straight and into turn 12 and turn 13. He's 3.5 tenths of a second up at the moment, though. That's not going to be enough for him to gain any places on the grid, but that could be a benefit to him in the race. You never know whether this could be the right call to be outside of the top 10 through the final sector now. Then keeping it nice and neat through 15 and 16, again hopping over the sausage curb but not getting too squirrely on the exit of the corner. 17 and 18 to finish off the lap, not touching the sausage curb there, keeping it within track limits. And through the final corner, he is the first person to finish his final run, and he goes up ahead of Trench on a 31.6, but stays outside of the top 10. But like you've mentioned, that could be a blessing in disguise, and J. Cole has invalidated his final run.
J. Cole's having an awful session, a bit of a Russia merchant, a self-proclaimed one at that. I don't want to label him unfairly, but yeah, that's an abysmal qualifying for him, unless he's expecting no one to improve behind him, and he's quite happy to take that P11. I mean, you know, as you say, blessing in disguise perhaps. Take the mediums, run long, hope the rain comes at the right time. I know the mediums can do the whole race, which is something we'll talk about during, I'm sure. But yeah, it could be a masterstroke for J. Cole that he's bottled all his laps. We'll see.
Yeah, it could be a masterstroke, like you say. Could work out in his favour, but already behind him on the track, YHYY 2.5 tenths up in the first sector, so that is already enough for him to get ahead of the Mercedes man. Funky Chicken has started his final run as well. He's only set the one run in this qualifying session as his first one, hasn't been able to improve on that one since. A lot of drivers cutting it quite fine to get to the line in time for their final runs. Carwin Rob, one of those, so is Tin Can as well. He's a little bit on the bubble, needing to push a little bit to get to the line in time to get his final run in this session. White Warrior then through the second sector of the lap is now 3.5 tenths of a second up on his time, so he's finding yet more. Runs a little bit deep though there into turn 13. Very, very easy to do, to just run a little bit too deep into the braking zone and cost yourself a bit of time. Keeps it neat through 15 and 16 this time around. Has he found enough time in this final sector to put himself inside that top 10? Tiago is out of the session. He will not be improving. White Warrior then to the final corner. He will be the first to finish the session, and it's P7. He does find a little bit of time in the final sector, but it's enough to get him 7th place, and Funky Chicken improves to go onto the front row.
I don't want to be a steward there. I was on board with Funky Chicken, but he ran all 4 wheels off the track at turn 10, fully extended there. I think it was a bit by accident, but a happy accident for him, because it got him that time to get in that 30.7, but he did run all 4 wheels off, and we know that every corner's being policed here, so I'm interested to see if anyone else has been having similar happy accidents. I know there's a lot of places you can run wide, but that was a bit of a naughty lap from Funky Chicken.
Yeah, on board with Forza Brendan at the moment, and interesting, on a fresh set of soft compound tyres, Forza Brendan's not finding any time. He's still down on his time that he set on those previous set of compound of tyres. Across the line, J. Cole comes, he goes P7, but that on his second lap on his tyres. Black Poma immediately comes through and beats him. It is a 0.9 and goes P6. Forza Brendan next across the line, currently 4th on the grid, stays 4th on the grid, does improve just to get onto a fresher set of tyres to start the race, but stays 4th on the grid, cannot improve any further. Carwin Rob is finding yet more time in the Alpine at the moment, currently on provisional pole by 2 tenths of a second. He comes around the final corner and he's going to improve by a further 10th and a half, a 30.3 from Carwin Rob. Yet again, Carwin Rob, incredible in qualifying. Across the line comes Tin Can. He doesn't improve, which means he will start this race from 7th position, but on the medium compound tyres. That in the end has worked out quite nicely for Tin Can.
That was a huge lap from Tin Can. I wasn't sure if it was deliberate. He had a huge slapper on. The rear just stepped out of him on the second to last corner. He was at a 45-degree angle almost till he recovered it and then backed out. But I think he would have backed off anyway because he's in such a good position. P7 on mediums. He can, if rain comes, he can run to the rain. The trouble is he going to be much slower than the soft runners? So that's a really interesting one, how that's going to play out, being the only man in the top 10 on mediums. But what a lap from Carwin Rob. 3.5 tenths on pole. He's done it again.
Yeah, he has done it again. The man that's I think he might get an award at some point at the end of this season about qualifying, because he's just been so strong in qualifying all season long. There you go then. Yet again, it's Carwin Rob on pole position. I think, if I'm not mistaken, for at least the 4th time this season. That is a brilliant drive again from the Alpine man. 3.5 tenths clear of Funky Chicken, but like you said, that lap could be under a little bit of investigation. We will wait and see. Rikurik in 3rd position in the Haas ahead of Forza Brendan. He did improve, but in the end wasn't really anywhere near Carwin Rob in qualifying, which is a little bit surprising to see. Brent in P5 in the AlphaTauri ahead of Black Poma in 6th. Tin Can on those mediums in 7th. It's J. Cole, White, and RJDW that round off the top 10. Outside the top 10 we have Matt, Dari, Raleigh JT, Tiag and Trent rounds off the grid. Trent crashing across the line on his final run and wasn't able to improve. An Alpine leads the field and an Alpine brings up the rear of the field, and I don't think we can say enough about Carwin Rob in qualifying so far this season. It's a shame it's not translated into the race on most occasions, but in qualifying he's almost unbeatable at this point.
He's truly in a class of his own. I think that's typified in not just the results, but the nature of the results. I mean, 3.5 tenths is a huge margin to take pole by when you consider just how clustered everyone was behind him. Around the high 30s, low 31s. So it is staggering, and the fact he's done it with such exemplary consistency is just, he definitely deserves an award if he keeps it up for the season, because front row every race, it's Sebastian Vettel 2011's qualifying performances, but he does need to take them into the race, and that is, of course, where the points come from. And this track of all tracks is not particularly a nice track to start on pole position, is it?
No, it definitely is. That is one thing we have got to talk about. Of course, that really long run down towards turn 2, turn 1. Of course, not really a corner in Formula 1 cars, or really in any car for that stretch. It's not really a corner at all. It's just a kink in a straight. But yeah, such a long run down to turn 2 here. Nearly a kilometre long, the run down towards the first braking zone on this track. And we already know on this game that the slipstream is way more powerful than it was in 2020. ERS looking powerful as well. Of course, no DRS, as all around goes Black Poma down the straight, interestingly. I think a bit too eager to warm his tyres up. But yeah, like I was saying, we know that Slipstream is already powerful enough on this game. ERS is really powerful as well. We haven't got, obviously, fuel mix modes anymore in this game. They're all set to the same, so everybody's going to be in the same fuel mix mode down towards turn 1, down towards turn 2. Slipstream is going to be incredibly powerful, so starting on the front row here might not actually work out in your favour, especially if you don't get a good start. If you get a poor initial jump off the start, you could get swamped down in towards turn 2.
Absolutely, and not even turn 2, you've got the pinch point of turn 1, which caused huge problems in 2 divisions, I think, possibly 3 last season, so that in itself is a problem. But yeah, if you don't get a good start, you're going to lose out all the way down this kink of 1 all the way towards 2. It's going to cause you gigantic problems, and I think Funky Chicken won't be too bothered if he gets a slightly poor getaway. He can just tuck into Carwin Robb's slipstream and not have to use as much ERS, because Carwin Robb is going to have to use his ERS like crazy to have any hope of staying in the lead by turn 1, and that's going to put him on the back foot in the laps to come as well.
Yeah, we know already throughout, well, this entire game, not just this track, but every track, it is so easy for the drivers behind, once you form a DRS train, to say DRS. The driver at the front, of course, doesn't have that luxury. They can't do the same thing, and Russia is quite hard on ERS management here. Despite the amount of braking zones, not a lot of the braking zones are actually that heavy, because you're kind of coming out of medium speed corners into another medium speed corner, so you're not saving a lot of ERS throughout this entire lap. It's going to be a really, really interesting race, especially with the inclement weather outside the top 10, by the way. Timat's through to Tiog 11th through 14th on mediums. Trent at the back, interestingly, on soft compound tyres, so a little bit different from the Alpine man. Before we get going though, Jake, who is going to be your pick for race winner?
Rickarich. I know he thrives in changeable conditions, a bit of a chaotic race. He's due for a win. It's coming home for the Finn today.
Yeah, I was got to keep my eye on him as well. I think we've got to keep an eye on Brent as well. Brent has done a really good job this season of avoiding carnage and doing a brilliant job in these races, so keep an eye out for him. But here come the lights then, ahead of the drivers. It's Carwin Robb and Funky Chicken on the front row. Lights out, and away we go then for the start of the Russian Grand Prix, and it's a brilliant start off the line from Carwin Robb. No challenge from Funky Chicken through turn 1, but now he tucks into the slipstream, does the Aston Martin man. Rikurik can't do the same, but it looks like Carwin Robb has done enough down towards turn 2 to hold the position for Zabrendan there. Looking down the inside of Rikurik, but can't get away, can't get down the inside. Tinkan runs off the track and through the bollards on the exit of turn 2. I think Raleigh JT was the other driver to go off the road as well, and he's dropped right to the back of the field. I think possibly with a bit of damage for the Williams man, but it's Carwin Robb that leads the way. Funky Chicken in second position. Rikurik maintains third. The top 5 have all maintained their position. J. Cole has got ahead of Black Pullman up into 6th position. Down a place goes Tinkan from 7th into 8th, but he still holds inside the top 10. Beyond that, though, a fairly clean start for everybody. It's just Raleigh JT has got some damage from somewhere.
Yeah, I was on board with Tinkan. What happened there was Tinkan, nervous as you would be on the brakes into turn 2, Raleigh just slammed clean into the back of him, took them both off the track and lost his entire front wing in the process. So it was just those two involved. Raleigh just smacked the back of Tinkan there. Everyone else, as you say, nice and clean off the line.
Got to make sure that Tinkan hasn't got any sort of rear wing or floor damage from that as well. We'll keep an eye on Tinkan's paces to see whether he is struggling just a little bit, but at the moment all seems to be okay for the Ferrari man. I say that, he loses the rear of the car just a little bit there coming out of turn 14, but he gets away with it. Black Puma really wide in front of him, but keeps the car on the track. Trench and Tiag running side by side. Trench on those softs, trying to make places early on, and he's up to 13th position. He's up 2 places from the back of the grid, but after lap 1 it's Carwin Robb that leads the way in the Alpine ahead of Funky Chicken, Rikurik and Forza Brendan. Brent though in 5th position, looking pretty racy in that AlphaTauri, trying to close in on the back of the championship leader, thinking about a move, but of course no DRS means it's going to be difficult for him to make that move, as Raleigh JT has unfortunately sped into the pit lane. J. Cole struggling maybe just a little bit to keep up with the back of Brent, but already Brent in that AlphaTauri is looking very, very racy in 5th position.
Yeah, he's going to maximise any little mistake that happens between these two. And Brent's very clean as well. Hopefully he can avoid penalties. There's a real shot at a podium here. And now I'm just checking in with the ERS stakes. Carwin Robb, I said he'd have to burn like crazy. How wrong I was. He's the only man in the top 5 sitting over 80%.
Wow.
So he's in a really good position here.
Yeah, really, really strong start to the race for Kari Robb, and that was all done with that initial start. The great launch off the line for the Alpine man kept him safe down towards turn 2. Funky Chicken then trying to keep up to the back of him. DRS, of course, will be enabled when we cross the line, and the DRS detection point is right after the start finish, so we will have DRS down towards turn 2. Further down in the background, you can see there Brent just ducking out of the slipstream, but not thinking about a move down in towards turn 13. Then everyone's starting to settle into the queue now. No one really going for those battles. We are going to start to see this DRS train, but as we mentioned earlier on, the gap in pace between the softs and the mediums is not next to nothing really. In qualifying it's nothing, in the race it's nothing either, and unlike a lot of tracks this season, we're not seeing that split between those on the softs and those on the alternate strategy.
Absolutely not. The mediums and the softs are neck and neck for the first few laps at least, and Carwin Robb absolutely went for it in the last 2 corners, and he's broken DRS on Chicken by about 2 or 3 thousandths of a second, nothing in it, because the next thing I was going to say was we've got a DRS train all the way from first down to 14th, but Carwin Robb just nailed those last 2 corners and just snuck out of DRS. He's back in it now, but we'll see how that changes through the lap. But Brendan looking really racy on the back of Rigovic. He got to within a tenth of a second, almost towards turn 2. I think the other move we're likely to see soon is J. Cole is really hounding Brent as we come through turn 7 here. Black Poma, J. Cole's nearly round on the exit of turn 5, sorry that was. And he's luckily, I think he's just about in Brent's DRS range, but if that's overcooked his tyres, he's going to be so slow for the next few corners through this middle part of the lap. Luckily, he is just in DRS, but that was nearly so costly for J. Cole.
Yeah, so easy to do, so easy to lose traction here, and of course the walls are there, ready to bite if you do make those mistakes. J. Cole then getting away with it, but he's got to make sure that those rear tyres are back into a good temperature window so that he doesn't make that mistake again. Further in the background there, RJDW thinking about a move on Tin Can down towards turn 12 and 13, but again, not close enough at this point in the race. Look at Forza Brendan though on the back of Rikurik. Look at Rikurik on the back of Funky Chicken. Funky Chicken all of a sudden starting to struggle on those soft compound tyres. He's dropped way back now from Carwin Robb. 1.7 seconds is the gap between our top 2 in this race. Funky Chicken starting to struggle just a little bit with those soft compound tyres. Rikurik looks like he could be close enough here for a challenge down towards turn 2, and look at that, already closing in. Trench, interestingly, with the fastest lap of the race further down the field, and Rikurik there to the outside line through towards turn 2. No contest whatsoever. Forza Brendan's trying to make it 2 places lost for Funky Chicken here around the outside, but that was too late on the brakes for Forza Brendan. He misses the corner and comes back out in that 4th position. Can Brent capitalise on that mistake from Forza Brendan? No, he cannot. He can't get close enough for turn 4. He'll stay in 5th place for the time being. Forza Brendan there tried it. It didn't work. It didn't cost him anything in the end, but it was a risk worth taking. It's in the background. Look at what's going on here. We've got Black Poma and RJTW racing. Tin Can dropping down places as well. Tin Can completely off the road there at turn 4, trying to hold on to the position, but RJTW is going to get up into 8th place. He passes down the inside of the Ferrari. Can Timac try and fight his way through as well on the medium compound tyres? But somewhere in all of this, Black has lost a heap of time to J. Cole, and everyone behind is starting to squabble over the positions.
I wonder if Black Poma made some kind of mistake, and that just bunched everyone up behind him and caused this sort of 2x2, as it were, through turns 5 and 6, because everyone was line astern, weren't they? Black Poma really struggling here, and look at that, Brent's made a mistake and J. Cole's through on him for 5th place down at turn 14. Brent starting to struggle now. I think these softs are starting to go away from some of these guys, and I just wanted to go back to the Brendan incident. He was lucky to avoid a penalty there. I've picked up a penalty for cutting across there. He lifted off just enough, and he's come into the pits now. Brent nearly followed him, then decided to stay out, and then ran completely off track at turn 17. But what a mad lap that was.
Yeah, really mad lap. But Forza Brendan then into the pit lane, going to try that undercut on Funky Chicken and Rikurik in front of him to try and get out the traffic as well. We've got a good battle here. Timac now on the back of Black Poma. I wonder if Black Poma's got a little bit of damage, because he is just plummeting down the order. It's reminiscent of Spain, like you mentioned earlier on. He just plummeted down the field, and look at that, the McLaren just understeering clean off the track through turns 2 and 3. Timac is going to have the inside line then through this corner. Can he get the move done? Look at Trent, White, trying to make it 3 wide. He's not going to have the speed to pull it it off, but he could get a good run out of this corner. Timats off the track, but gets the move done. Black Puma's running out of ERS as well, as White Chawai makes the move down the inside of turn 5. Black Puma gives him just enough room, but these two squabbling hard, and now here comes Trench thinking about a move on the McLaren man. He can't get the move done. White Chawai is through. Trench now trying to think about the outside line. This will be a brave move if he can pull this one off. Can he pull it off? Yes, he can, I think, but Black Puma's got the better run out of the corner. This brings Dari now into play as well. Trench has to back out of that one. That move is not going to work, but he will have DRS along with the McLaren down this straight, and Black Puma running out of ERS means he's going to get swamped by the Alpine man and possibly his teammate as well. I don't know what's happened here for Black Puma, but he is just falling through the field.
I can't fathom that he doesn't have damage. He has to have some kind of problem, whether that's front wing or rear wing or floor. And look at Tiago trying to go up the inside of that off camber turn 15. There's going to be nothing going from there. But yeah, how many places he's lost in a lap? 4 or 5? Yeah. And when Timats overtake, that was pretty naughty from the AlphaTauri. I have to say, he completed the overtake, or he did the entire overtake off the track. Brent Pitts. And if I was a snidey, petty little man, which I am, I would report that if I was in Black Puma's position, but we shall see. But it's crucial for all of them to got through, because you can see how much Black Puma has lost out in that train to all of them, and he's now behind Tiago as well, and he's fully dropped to the back, hasn't he? Awful, awful lap.
Yeah, really, really poor lap for him, unfortunately. By the way, Funky Chicken.
Rally's round.
Rally at the back of the field. That is a shame to see. I think he's gotten away without hitting anything, so he can continue on, but he'll be hoping for some sort of safety car a little bit later on in this race to bring him back into contention. Funky Chicken got back past Rekurik and up into second position, but all of this battling for these guys has just allowed Carwin Robb to disappear at the front of the field, and still Carwin Robb has not really used any ERS at this point. He's at 73% coming through turn 10 and onto this back straight. He's doing a stellar job in that Alpine. But what we haven't seen, Forza Brendan obviously came into the pit lane. Brent reacted a lap later, but the people that Forza Brendan was racing have not decided to follow him in. Funky Chicken and Rekurik have both stayed out on the track. We've got to see whether this undercut on the medium compound tyres is strong enough for him to pull this one off. By the way, further down, Trench has got the move done on White Chawai from the back of the grid. Trench is doing a brilliant job on those soft compound tyres. Unlike some of the other drivers around him, he's still finding a bit more speed in those tyres, so he's now up into 8th position. Do we see anyone into the pit lane? J. Cole is into the pit lane. Funky Chicken and Rekurik are also both into the pit lane as well. Carwin Robb stays out, and so does RJDW. So Carwin Robb still leads, RJDW is up into second, and Tin Can is up into third. But Tin Can now has got a good run on the back of RJDW. Can he get the move done up towards turn 2 on the Alfa Romeo man? RJW I don't think is going to put up too much of a fight here. Tin Can to the inside line. He brakes later as well. Alfa Romeo driver doesn't decide to fight that one. He lets Tin Can through, and Tin Can now up into second position. And what a lap there from Forza Brendan, just proving that those medium tyres are really strong. He is comfortably ahead of Funky Chicken and Rekurik.
There's a huge undercut on the mediums. They're so good that first couple of laps, and we said earlier they're about as good as the softs. And by lap 6, lap 7, you can go easily a second lap faster on those mediums. So I'm not at all surprised that he's managed a 2.5 second undercut. I was about to say, do you think these guys are holding out for, you know, maybe go soft if the rain's coming, or even because the wear on the softs is quite low, even if the drop off is large. So you could maybe even try and stretch the softs really far as Rally retires in the pits and go soft intermediate. They'll feel horrible, they'll be very slow, but the wear on them is such that you can probably just about do it depending when it arrives. Because I'm wondering why Carwin Robb and RJ stayed out as long as they have when they're seeing their rivals come in. Because Carwin Robb is just surrendering his lead here to Brendan. We've seen how much Brendan has gained on Chicken and Brent and Rikurik. If Carwin Robb stays out much longer, he is coming in now. Brendan would have been close to undercutting him.
Yeah, it could have taken that. It could be possible that he could take the lead. RJ, interestingly, has stayed out. He's continuing on. I think the only reason why we're seeing RJDW and maybe Trench as well staying out is because they're in a DRS train with a bunch of medium runners that have still got good speed. So RJDW at this point in the race isn't losing too much. He's just kind of being dragged along by Tin Can, so he can keep up a good speed on those softs and maybe have a tyre advantage a little bit later on.
Brendan's done it.
Yeah, he's done it. He's got the lead of this race.
He's done it.
Wow.
Carwin Robb has been completely caught napping there, hasn't he? He sat on that 3-second lead, assumed the undercut wasn't there, and he's just been completely caught napping.
That's crazy to think that when Brendan came into the pit lane, he was 4th, and within 3 laps, he now leads this race and has a second advantage over Karen Robb. We've already seen Karen Robb does have brilliant speed in that Alpine, so I wouldn't be shocked if we see him right on the back of that Red Bull once again. But Borza Brendan has put himself out of danger now of that battle with Funky Chicken and Rikurik, and has put himself clear and into a good position. That is a good strategy from the Red Bull man to get himself further up the field. We've got to see now, though, how far the rest of the medium runners can go. And
there goes RJ, sorry.
Oh,
RJ's
yeah.
up the inside of Tin Can into turn 12. I think Tin Can had a huge oversteer moment coming out of 10, and that put him all out of shape. He was over on the far extreme side of the track, and RJ just said thank you very much and took that. But you can see how much he's struggling through those off-camber corners. Look at the traction Tin Can has through there, and RJ does pit now.
Yeah, finally into the pit lane. Trench continues on in the Alpine, so he thinks that he can go a bit further on these soft compound tyres. Tin Can then back into the lead of the race, but he now has Mats right behind him, and fair play to Mats. Mats on the same strategy as Tin Can at the moment, did start outside the top 10, so his tyres will be just a little bit fresher. But he's doing a brilliant job. He's got a great run here down towards turn 2 on the back of Tin Can. He thinks about a move down the inside, but he's not close enough in the braking zone to go for it. But either way, Mats on those medium compound tyres is doing a brilliant job as well, clinging onto the back of our championship protagonist Tin Can, doing a solid job. Although I say that, Mats does have very little ERS. Mind you, Tin Can doesn't have much more himself either, so these guys have burnt a lot of their ERS in these opening laps trying to pass some other drivers. Karen Robb, by the way, has got back into the lead of the race. Forza Brendan trying to come back at him around the outside of turn 3, but won't be able to get the move done. Karen Robb then, within a lap, is back into the lead of the race.
Yeah, even on the mediums, the drop-off is quite big, so it's no surprise to me that Brendan's lost out, because even at 2 laps, his tyres will be a solid 2-3 tenths a lap slower. I think Robb's quicker anyway, so I think we're just seeing that bear out. Penalty for Black Poma, and I don't want to say I told you so when I wasn't sure we would see many pens, but Tin Can, Carwin Robb, Brendan, Chicken, none of them have a warning so far, which is good to see, because hopefully this race will not be settled on penalties. And I think the thing we need to be wary of now is that gap between Tin Can and Carwin Robb. It's 15.3 seconds at the moment. If indeed rain comes, I keep mentioning it like it's inevitable. It might not be, but if it does come, that's 15 seconds that Carwin Robb and Brendan have got to make up on him to win this race in 17 laps.
It's a lot to do. It really is a lot to do for those drivers if that is what they need to do to win this race. Of course, we'll wait and see when the rain comes, if it does come, like you say. Of course, we do have forecast weather, I think it's on approximate, so it's not exactly identical to what the weather is going to be for this race. So we'll wait and see what happens in this one. Forza Brendan's done enough to stay within DRS range of Karen Robb, so he'll be able to latch onto the back of the Alpine. Funky Chicken sits in the net third of those that have pitted. He heads Rikurik, Brent and J. Cole all in a queue at the moment behind the Aston Martin man, but none of them seem to be able to really get a move done. RJGW, after his pit stop, is out completely on his own. It was a good shot really from RJGW to try something a little bit different, but by staying out that long, he's now 5 seconds off the back of the queue of cars in front that he was a lot closer to, and that means that he's going to struggle just a little bit to try and close in on them as they all benefit from DRS.
I think I'm